Real estate is divided in a Texas divorce the same way any other asset or money or bank account is divided, according to the community property scheme. If the real estate and your interest in that real estate vested during the marriage, then it will likely be presumed to be community property. If you owned the real estate prior to marriage and you handled it correctly, more than likely, if you have the right title documents and everything, you could show by clear and convincing evidence that that's separate property. So the court's really going to figure out, okay, what is the real estate? And was it acquired during the marriage or before or by gift or inheritance to decide, is it community or separate? Then they're going to try to find the value of that item and then distribute that item. If it's community property, they could award it to either of you or require that it be sold if you can't agree. But if it's separate property, the court isn't able to award that to the other party. If it's yours, it stays yours if you can meet the burden to show that it was separate property. But essentially, real estate is dealt with just like any other asset in your Texas divorce. Your retirement accounts, such as your 401k, a pension, an IRA, are divided the same way other assets are in your Texas divorce. Essentially, the court's going to try to figure out what is this asset, which retirement account, which 401k, etc. Then they're going to figure out, was this community property or separate property? Like, was it obtained during the marriage or not? Then what's the value of that thing? And retirement accounts, that's where it's a little tricky because some of them are just the face value of the account, like say maybe on an IRA. But then if it's a pension, those get a little bit hairy to figure out how much they're worth. And then the court will decide who to award it to. In a Texas divorce, business assets are treated just like all the other assets, whether it be retirement accounts, real estate. You go through the same process. What is the business asset? When did title vest so they can figure out if it's community or separate? Then we have to figure out how much is the thing worth. Again, valuation can be tricky. What's your business worth? It probably depends. You may need a business valuation expert to figure it out if it's a relatively decent size. If it's your little sole proprietorship where you sell, candles or something through an MLM, maybe not quite as difficult to figure out. It just depends. They've got to figure out how much it's worth and then decide who to award it to. So in handling business assets during a divorce, it'll be treated pretty much like all the other assets with a few complications in determining who gets it and how much it's worth. Vehicles and personal property are divided the same way as other assets in your Texas divorce. And where this can get a little difficult is in the name it section. So we're going to name it, we're going to value it, and then we're going to award it. And naming it, you guys would be surprised how often people forget what sorts of vehicles they have. And it's like, okay, yeah, you both drive a certain car to work. You know about that one. But did you remember the dirt bike, the golf cart, the boat, the motorcycle, that weird, old Corvette that's in the back house at the lake? All of that stuff, all of your assets have to be named in your Texas divorce, identified, so that then a court can put a value on it and then decide who to award it to. When dealing with debt in the context of a Texas divorce, you need to consider legality and then the reality. And here's the thing, under the law, you'll hear it said there's no such thing as community debt because essentially the person who takes out the debt from the credit card company or from the bank enters into a contract with that bank. And so that bank or that credit card company is going to look to this one person to fulfill the debt. So it's not the same thing as like a community asset that you earn, and it's this thing that can be divided where you're not in what's called privity of contract with a bank or something that makes it all kind of muddled and confusing. So technically there's no such thing as community debt. But in reality, that's often kind of how it's treated. Like, okay, in the context of, let's say you go to mediation, which you probably will, you create an inventory and appraisement that becomes the basis of your mediation spreadsheet. And what will happen there is you list all of the assets along with all of the liabilities. And you're essentially trying to weigh everything against each other, these assets and these debts, these assets and these debts and make them, something like 50-50, depending on what's going on in your situation. And so in reality, what'll happen is you may get the house and the debt on the house, and there's still some positive equity they've got to match against, like some other kind of bank account. Okay. So the way it plays out in most situations is the debt follows the toy. And toy, like, the house, you get the house, you're going to get the mortgage. You get the boat, you're going to get the note on the boat. You get the dirt bike, you're going to get the installment plan on the dirt bike that y'all went into a few years ago. So when dealing with debts, usually it's part of the negatives that balance against the positives to try to get you to a just and right division of your estate.